Good evening, I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. My professionals join. We've had a tumultuous week in the Donald J. Trump for President campaign. When last we met, gentlemen, Paul Manafort was the campaign manager, and now he is gone. Why and how, we don't have time for that because we move on to the new campaign managers. These are the third and fourth campaign managers. One is named Bannon. He is an unknown as a campaign manager. He is a publisher and film producer and media maven of many years standing, associated with a website, Breitbart. The other is Kelly Conway, a pollster, who was working for the Cruz campaign until the Cruz campaign ended, and now she is the co-campaign director for Donald J. Trump for president. Since this changeover, we've seen policies that are called into question, chiefly the immigration policy. In remarks over these last days, Kelly Conway on television, national television, used the term "to be determined" about the immigration policy for the Donald J. Trump for president campaign. The confusion here is that Mr. Trump, through all the rallies for this last year, has said, build a wall, Mexicans pay for it, and the 11 million or 12 million people who are here illegally must go back. Must go back. He's also spoken of and mentioned repeatedly Operation Wetback. As crude as that sounds, that was a policy of the Eisenhower administration in the 1950s. Now we're told, this is breaking news, that the immigration policy speech that Donald J. Trump had scheduled later this week, I believe in Colorado, has been canceled. So, gentlemen, the campaign changes. Does that suggest that they're changing policies as well, and the wall and deportation are going to go away along with the Muslim ban? Or is it that the campaign is in turmoil and this is what it looks like when they don't have a strategy? David, I begin with you because those are several choices. It's just that I don't want to settle on one thing being a contradiction because they keep changing their opinion and their managers day to day. Good evening to you, David.
Good evening, John. And look, I think it's all of the above, so that ought to satisfy you. I mean, I think you have a campaign that lacks a strategy and a plan for the general election. That's always just been sort of built around the candidate and whatever he feels like talking about at any given moment. It worked in the primary. It hasn't worked so well in the general election. I think the other part is that with this latest change in leadership, one of the new facets of that is that although Steve Bannon's never run a campaign for Dogcatcher before, let alone something at this level, Kellyanne Conway is a very experienced political operative who understands modern campaigning and the way things are. And I think what they've tried to do is channel what they think is best about Trump into something they think could win him a general election, which would be to show some flexibility on immigration or how he talks about immigration, because what they're really worried about ultimately, and this gets to all of the talk about appealing to African Americans, is white suburban men and women who tend to vote Republican but don't want to be associated with a mean guy. And Trump's rhetoric has been turning them off, and we've seen it in the polls, and everybody on the Republican side that looks at private polling knows this. So they're trying to sort of square a circle here, and that's the problem, because then how do you do that? How do you take a candidate whose brand is, I say what I mean no matter what, and I'm not your typical politician who, moves around on issues, with his signature defining issue? I mean, if you're going to flip around or flop around on anything, you don't want to do it on your defining issue. And immigration, for better or worse, is his defining issue. And so I think they ran into trouble doing that. And I think that's why you're seeing all of the confusion around that issue this week, which is supposed to be the thing that is his strong suit.
Mr. Fund, I read from the transcript. This is Sopan Deb for CBS. Just put this up, and I thank him very much. He's very good about this, getting it up right away. This is a transcript in a conversation with Bill O'Reilly within these last hours. O'Reilly, and in the Impact segment tonight, there are reports Donald J. Trump may be changing his immigration vision. As you may know, just about a year ago, he said on The Factor he would deport millions of illegal aliens in a humane way, quote, humane way. and that. And Trump's response is, I just want to follow the law. What I'm doing is following the law. You know this. This was put out. We had a great meeting over the weekend with Hispanics and the leaders of the Hispanic community, and we discussed a lot of different things. And this was one of the many things that was discussed. And one of the groups, one of the media outlets that have gotten everything about me wrong, including the fact that I would never run, and the reporter actually said he would give up his salary if he did. I don't think I have ever held him to that. And then he goes on and on and on and on. More word salad. Trump, in any event, doesn't want to answer the question, John. So I puzzle. Are they changing their policy? Is that what's going on here? The not answering the O'Reilly question about deportation?
John, I agree with David that their only chance to win the election is to stop alienating moderate, suburban women. And Donald Trump has done that by being way too provocative for their taste. Now, Donald Trump also believes something else. He believes famously that if he stood in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shot someone, he wouldn't lose a single part of his base. Donald Trump is going to gamble on that. If Donald Trump had challenged the wall, I think David's concerns would have been very real, because the wall is such a potent symbol, and Trump mentioned it in every rally. Trump hasn't mentioned deportation for months, except in passing. I think Trump can modify his stance to be more acceptable, because frankly no one really believes that 11 million people are going to be deported. They want a crackdown, but they know that 11 million people are not going to actually be deported forcibly. I think Donald Trump is listening to these new advisors and temporarily behaving himself. There's a lot of creak in the joints as you make the transition, but this is his only chance to victory, and I think he is having a better week than he did before he had Paul Manafort running things.
Thaddeus?
First to Mr. Fun. Now, if Mr. Trump were to shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and claiming he wouldn't lose a vote, how would Mr. Trump know that that individual he had just shot was not one of his voters to begin with? It is not an academic question, because in his pursuit of moderate suburban female voters, how many of his own voters are going to feel that he shot himself in the foot and stabbed them in the back?
I don't think that many, because Donald Trump is going to be so pugilistic on so many issues in the debates with Hillary. I think he can probably get away with most of that. If he goes too far, of course, he will alienate his base, and they probably won't vote for him, but they're not going to vote for Hillary. Donald Trump has no alternative, because right now he is stuck at about 40 to 42 or 43% of the vote. And even if you add in Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, the third-party candidates, he has to bump that up. He has to take a calculated risk by alienating or potentially alienating some of his base in order to reach voters who normally vote Republican, but so far aren't.
Therefore, I follow the battlegrounds. That's where the election is held. So, David, puzzle with me. Rallies in Michigan, Minnesota, scheduled for Mississippi and Texas, and there was a rally scheduled for Oregon that I understand will be to be continued, not this week. Those are not battlegrounds, David. Those are blue states. What is this strategy here? Sometimes it occurs to me that there is no strategy, and then other time I look at the rally and they like the excitement. So is campaigning in a blue state the way to win a battleground? Is that what they're doing?
I'm not sure what they're doing. One quick point, John, on the immigration thing. John's correct, except when you start to alter your position on deportation, you get into the discussion of what to do with the 11 million people, and then you start to talk about legalizing them, unless you're going to do nothing.
Citizenship.
That's where it can get That's where it can get problematic. On where Trump goes, it doesn't make any sense that he would waste time and money rallying in Texas or Mississippi or Connecticut, which he's already done. The Oregon rally has been canceled. I believe the Minnesota rally may have been delayed. Michigan I can understand, because it's a state that he wants to challenge for, and I don't think it necessarily hurts him at this point to still go there, because at least it's the outer tier of the battleground states. But as far as why he is going specifically in a place like Mississippi or Texas, because it's time and money. But from what we understand, this is what Trump likes to do. But I don't think they understand or don't care that every minute they spend doing something that doesn't get them votes where they need them is a colossal waste of time, and it costs him the election.
Yes, John, why isn't Trump living in Cincinnati and Pittsburgh? What's the explanation that we could come up with? Do the managers not know how to read a map?
Donald Trump went to Connecticut for one reason only. Paul Manafort's family is there, and he had all of his family members on the stage to bask in the applause and be with Donald Trump and to show that Paul Manafort had arrived. That's the only reason Trump went to Connecticut.
And then they fired him.
Right. I think that Trump, remember, most of these have been fixed since Manafort was there. Now, I still think Donald Trump is going to make stupid mistakes and go off and campaign where he shouldn't, but I think there will be less of it now because Manafort had clearly decided internally, we're not going to win, therefore I'm going to have a good time. I think this new team, they have their own issues and problems, but I think they actually think they can try to win, and they're going to try to win.
Thaddeus, quickly, we have about a minute.
Where do they start immediately to think they can win, and where does he go immediately?
David?
He's in Ohio today. That's where he needs to be. He's been in Ohio, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. I mean, that's where I expect him to spend most of their time, and Florida.
John?
I think Donald Trump is going to just live in the Midwest and Florida and any other state where he creeps up in the polls and comes closer than he does now. The national polls are actually helping him a little bit, but he has to focus like a laser beam, I agree with David, on those key states.
John Funn, David Drucker, Thaddeus McCotter. We're going to turn to the Democratic candidate, Hillary Clinton, next, because there are new revelations about the emails, and there is a comment by the former president of the United States about the Clinton Foundation and its future in the event that Mrs. Clinton is the 45th president. In other words, there's trouble in Clinton land. I'm John Batchelor.